The terms data science and data mining are often used interchangeably, and the former has taken a life of its own as various individuals and organizations try to capitalize on the current hype surrounding it, the data science field, basically. At a high level, data science is a set of fundamental principles that guide the extraction of knowledge from data, whereas data mining is the extraction of knowledge from data using technologies that incorporate these principles. So it is also referred to as exploratory data analysis because of the large quantities of data that needs to be analyzed using statistical, technical, and business knowledge or domain knowledge in general. As a term, data science often is applied more broadly than the traditional use of data mining. But data mining techniques provide some of the clearest illustrations of the principles of data science. So, for most cases, data mining is approached in two ways, either to solve a problem or to identify a problem. The former, solving a problem, is what we call the hypothesis testing. And usually these hypotheses come from a high level data analysis. One could see that sales is going down, and when these sales are broken down, it is identified that product number 4 is the least performing. And it is also identified that location B is also the least performing territory. One may start at these points to see what exactly is happening in these two areas and then make policies or strategies on how to improve the sales on these impacted areas. The latter is what we consider as knowledge discovery. Here, we do not usually know what is there waiting for us. Usually, unsupervised approaches are used here by comparing transactions with the overall general trend to detect anomalies or irregularities in, let's say, sales data. Then, on that case, business users are notified if such cases exist. This is helpful, especially on fraud detection. While it is important that we, as an organization, protect ourselves from the expenses of fraud transactions, we do not know outright if one transaction that was accepted by our online shop is legitimate or not. So through this approach, we can capture what used to be regular transactions and see which among these transactions are not seemingly normal, and then use its profile to identify future fraudulent transactions. Now let's get into detail. Hypothesis testing is usually used for the decisions that repeat, especially at massive scale, in order to improve decision-making accuracy. So for these types of decisions, let's take a look at a specific story, which is predicting customer churn. Churn is a common KPI tracked in telecommunications and financial services companies. Churn happens when your customers switch to another company or basically your competitors. And that specific scenario or phenomena, you might think that it's normal from a consumer perspective, but from a business standpoint, it is a very expensive scene or very expensive phenomenon. It's because usually companies would invest on marketing campaigns, spend more campaigns to keep customers loyal to themselves. However, even with those investments or spending, if the customer still decides to move to your competitor, then you will not gain any return from those investments, and thus that will be a loss of revenue for you. So it's a really critical KPI that is being tracked for these types of companies, telecommunications and financial services, for most of the time. Now, taking this scenario, let's say your company's research team identified that attracting new customers is more expensive than retaining existing ones. So this is where churn will come in, because you really have to identify which among your customers have a high risk of churning and which one has technically a minimal or low risk of churning. So, as a data analyst for the marketing department, the question now really is, how should you choose a set of customers who will receive offers in order to reduce a churn? Okay, so usually you have a constraint on this scenario, a specific budget or a limited budget, and you would want to tap those customers uh, who would really, who you are assured of that they are not churning or not. So you can still you are assured at a minimal level or at some level that you can get some returns out of those investments. Now let's look at the second scenario. So if your organization or your company has to make decisions where discoveries need to be made, let's take a look at this story, the story of Target. And this is a real case. This has caused buzz in the internet back then in 2012 because Target technically identified that a teenage girl, was pregnant way before her father did. Okay, so because people, as you know, as creatures of habit, tend to stick to a certain buying behavior, and being in that habit, it's really quite difficult to change. But then, with your purchasing behavior that the retail company has, Target in this case, they can identify if there are any changes in your shopping habits. Now, using these data, they can identify which of these customers uh, could be uh, could be pregnant. Okay, so that's a specific question that they found out using that irregularities on the customers' shopping habits. Can we predict which among these customers or which people are expecting a baby? Okay, so that's the question now. So this is an example of a scenario, okay, which is in addition to the fraudulent case that I mentioned earlier, where discoveries need to be made first before they can apply it and make some decisions. Now, just to provide further examples of data mining in business, we are also, companies would look at affinity positioning. Okay, so affinity positioning is when a company identifies which products are highly affiliated with each other. So if from the transactions we see that eggs usually go with milk, or coffee usually goes with milk, then we can say, at least at some level, that these two items are highly affiliated or has a high affinity. Then we can position products effectively. Okay, so for example, if we have a product that we want to push out, let's say a new type of milk, or base a milk that has to be phased out, and we still have a lot of stocks of those, and we know that milk always goes with coffee based on the purchasing behavior, then as a company, I would make some bundles, put milk beside coffee or put milk beside eggs, whichever whatever pattern you have discovered, and sell them together as a bundle at a discount. So you can now position products effectively, whether to introduce new products into the market, or you just want to phase out the items that will be out in the market soon. Okay. Now, the second one is cross-selling. You have encountered this. You ordered one item and then suddenly the sales lady would offer another thing. Okay, usually a complementing product on your existing purchase. So cross-selling is the ability to offer complementary products to the existing purchase so that it can drive more sales. So the goal of cross-selling is increasing the value of your basket, okay, or the transaction. And the data mining aspect here is to identify, which products actually go well with this product or existing basket, and at the same time, if the customer itself is, usually purchases these kinds of cross selling. So if you are highly can be, if you are those people who can be highly influenced by these cross selling, then you will usually experience a lot of cross selling in the future. Okay, now CRM, customer relationship management, it's ideally, not ideally, usually customer relationship management systems store information about a customer, and usually it's in aggregated form. So let's say a customer A is at this age, his or her last purchase was 2 months ago, his or her average basket size is X number of pesos. So you have these information, and you can understand your customer better. And using these customer data, you can now develop programs to maximize whatever you can offer to these types of customers. This is also where most clustering segmentation is happening. Now, fourth is credit scoring. This is usually used in the financial services companies, and they want to identify which customers are at risk of defaulting. Defaulting means the customer does not pay back what was lent to him or her by the bank or insurer. So if you fall under the higher risk category, then they might lower down what they will lend you, or they might not approve the request at all. So you have that case. Now, we discussed churn earlier. That's another business, and also we discussed fraud detection very lightly. Okay, but still, these two are also some of the critical aspects or critical things that is being tracked in the business, and it's usually used with business intelligence and data mining. Now, in a non-corporate setting, we also have these applications. Some of you might have encountered them. Music search applications. You heard very nice music in the restaurant, but you're not familiar what song is it, and you really want to store that in your Spotify or Apple Music playlist. You would usually tap these applications, SoundHound, Shazam, Music Match, to identify what music that is, and yeah, maybe you can basically store them in your search them in your music application, and then store it on your playlist. Okay, gone are the days where you will record the music from the radio and just play them afterwards. So you have these smart applications to help you with that. Voice activated controls, Siri, Google Assistant, Bixby. These also has some data mining inside, with the speech to text capabilities and speech recognition in general. These mobile or smart assistants could help you with the tasks that you are asking them to do. Okay, you can also use data mining in bioinformatics. Okay, it's a very prevalent thing today, especially in this pandemic. It's a health crisis we're in. Identifying if your sample has the strain of the nCoV, okay, nCoV-19. It's a very bioinformatics case. Okay, what I have here is Mitsui Knowledge Industry. It's a bioinformatics company which develops medicines using basically developing personalized medicine using bioinformatics. Okay, and lastly is crime pattern detection. So for countries who have a better better security organizations, okay, they are leveraging on the data, whether it's CCTV data, immigration data. They use these informations to track high risk individuals, to see what their how they're moving across the town or in the country, and maybe see if there are any irregularities in the pattern in those travel history.